I'm just so delighted to be able to show you this beautiful artwork by Frances Hodgkins, Seaside Lodgings, from around 1919. So this is such an important artwork because of the way that it gives prominence to the still life on the table, not just the flowers, but the whole array of breakfast materials, kind of tipped up so that we can see this kind of almost abstract arrangement of shapes and colours right in the foreground. The women themselves are sort of pushed to the background, so it shows us the direction that Frances Hodgkins was heading into with her leitmotif, the still life outdoors in the landscape. My name's Linda Tyler and I'm an Associate Professor in Art History at the University of Auckland, and I'm here at Webb's in the auction rooms in Auckland. So this artwork is so interesting because it's a painting from the end of the First World War, and yet it kind of harks back to an earlier era. If we look at it, we can see two women seated at a breakfast table with all of this material all around them. But in the background are all these clues to where they are, and the title of the work is Seaside Lodgings. So we get the idea they're in this sort of Victorian house, they're on holiday together, perhaps down at St Ives in Cornwall, which is where Frances Hodgkins was living at the time. We can see the piano in the background. This woman is reading a newspaper, perhaps the morning newspaper. The other woman, I think, might be doing some embroidery, or she's anyway busy, seated and quite self-absorbed. Right in the middle of the table is this bunch of beautiful flowers, the foxglove and the anemone. So we know that we're looking at a scene in springtime, and the colours kind of suit that. It's the most beautiful kind of light palette that she's used. Typically for Frances Hodgkins, lots of layers of paint. So we look at this kerosene lamp, which is kind of a bit prominent in the upper part of the painting. Immediately we are aware that when this painting was finished in 1919, this was actually, when electricity was in most people's houses. So this is sort of harking back to that earlier time. It's kind of matched by these beautiful blue flowers on either end of the piano, and then over the fireplace we can see quite a complicated arrangement with a bell jar with perhaps a stuffed bird inside of it, two blue candlesticks, a third red one, and another bunch of flowers just at the back on the sideboard. So there's a lot of clutter, very Victorian, and this is kind of fitting in with the Camden Town School of Painting. We know, interested in interiors, creating mood pictures essentially. Frances Hodgkins herself obviously really highly valued this painting. When she put it for sale in Manchester, it had a price tag of £40, so that's an enormous amount of money. But it actually had a wonderful life before it even got to be shown in Manchester in 1926. It went off to America, perhaps the only painting that we know of Frances Hodgkins's to be exhibited over in America, because it was chosen by John Wesley Bey of the Carnegie Institute, and he was roaming around looking for what he called the old masters of tomorrow, the sorts of artists who are going to be important in the future. And he saw this at the International Exhibition, their 26th exhibition in Old Bond Street, and he thought, I must have it for my exhibition in Pittsburgh. So it got to show at Pittsburgh at the Carnegie Institute, and then it travelled up to upstate New York to Buffalo to the Albright Gallery there. So it would have been seen by thousands of Americans who were looking for what was going to be important in painting in the future. And then when she got it back and was able to show it again, she put this high price on it because it had been so valued by John Wesley Bey, the director of the Carnegie Institute. And she wrote to her mother, very proud that she had been chosen for that show. And then, of course, when her brother asked her, to send things out to New Zealand to remind New Zealanders what she was doing, this was the work that she sent, an example of where she was going in terms of her modernist technique, the lighter palette, the bright colours. So she was kind of working with this sort of pastel-y kind of group of colours, and that work then got to show at the Canterbury Society of Arts. It didn't sell, it was a little bit too modern for Christchurch's tastes, but he kept it, her brother, and obviously loved it, and when he died in 1945 it was passed to his son Michael in Tauranga, and that's where the family of the current owners were able to buy it in 1951, and they chose it because it was such a great example of her British style in the period just directly after the First World War. I just noticed, which I hadn't noticed before, that there's a whopping great light switch there, which makes me think that maybe that's an electric light, but I don't think so. I think it's a kerosene lamp. It looks like it, doesn't it? Because it's got the big bowl underneath it. You wouldn't have that. It would, if it was an ordinary electric light, it would have some sort of bulb. But maybe what that is, you know how in old houses they would have a bell for the servants to come and clear the breakfast table. All these artworks are on view here in the Auckland Rooms until Monday the 26th of August, when their live auction will take place here.